Tip number 7, know the difference between multicast and unicast. You know, Dan, we've referenced this a couple of times already, and now we're going to focus on it a little bit. Just simply, why is this such an important point?
Well, Tom, I think we could spend an entire webinar just on this slide if we really wanted to delve into it. But to hit it at a 30,000-foot level, it ties back into the earlier slide about why we need to make sure that we don't assume the IT director has video-specific knowledge. In 90% of the data that people are using today, maybe 99% of the data that people are using today is unicast. So it's an individual session, like you browsing to ESPN.com on your computer. That is a unique session with whichever server is hosting that instance of ESPN.com to your PC. And so that allows for some very specific definitions in bandwidth. It allows for some very specific definitions in how that communication takes place. You know, that's a TCP/IP communication. Multicast doesn't really follow a lot of those traditional rules where you're not looking at a TCP/IP communication. You're not looking at one source to one end client device. So it's a completely different level of network configuration. It requires a lot more time on the end users or the integrator side of things in order to configure that network. And it requires a level of education going in to make sure that you're telling the customer these are the things that we're going to have to be aware of if we're going to put multicast on your network. And a quick story is if you do it wrong, if you set up your spanning tree incorrectly. We were at a customer last year where we were just running 2 6-meg streams to desktops, but the customer's network spanning tree had a loop in it, and we were unaware that it had a loop in it until we turned on the multicast. And the multicast TTL was at something like 15. These 2 6-meg streams ended up propagating something over 15 gig of traffic on the customer network because they were just continually looping back on themselves through the spanning tree loop that was configured in the customer's network. That never happens with unicast, but with multicast, a poorly configured network can cause some serious problems in a real hurry.
And doesn't it mean that end-to-end you need to be able to have this multicast enablement, right? And the people you're talking to have to know that all those devices in between are enabled for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, all the devices have to be enabled for it. You have to have at least one layer 3 switch or core router that's going to be intercepting the traffic and you know, configuring the IGMP groups. There's a lot that goes into several different configurations that we cover anytime we're putting in a multicast-based system.